Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited to have another issue of our APG online events and another virtual opening and juror talk. Most of you are familiar with the Atlanta Photography Group, but those of you who are not or who are new to us today, just a little bit of background information. The Atlanta Photography Group was established in 1987, and it is an artist-initiated 501c3 nonprofit membership organization, and we provide opportunities and support to the fine art community. APG is generously funded by the Lubo Fund, the City of Atlanta Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs, the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, and the Georgia Council for the Arts through the appropriation of the Georgia General Assembly. Georgia Council for the Arts also receives support from its partner agency, the National Endowment for the Arts. APG is also supported by our individual donors, our membership, and our volunteers. And this support and grants is really what makes APG programming possible. So I hope you will consider either volunteering or joining or donating to help us continue to provide really wonderful arts and photography events virtually and also in person. Today's event is our virtual opening and curator talk with Gregory Harris, or juror talk with Gregory Harris. It is PhotoBUCKHEAD. It is on the walls at the Buckhead Library, and I do want to thank Fulton County and the Buckhead Library for hosting this exhibition again. It's been several years since this exhibition has taken place at the library. It did not take place last year because they were under renovation, but we are on the walls in their newly renovated space. Unfortunately, it's not yet open to the public, but it will be open to the public and they will be able to see the work as soon as they lift the restrictions for visiting libraries. But it does look great on the walls, and I'm really excited to have this exhibition. I wanted to thank our installation team who helped put it up on the walls: Reese Birdwhistle, Jennifer Richmond, Darnell Wilburn, Cheryl D'Amato, and I also wanted to thank Nathan Dean for helping to facilitate organizing with the staff at the library to have this exhibition take place again. And also I wanted to thank all of the artists who are participating. We have a really great group of artists. Greg has picked a really dynamic selection of images, which he's going to talk about in just a little bit. Okay. Our artists in the exhibition are listed here: Anna Castilla Lopez, Andy Steele, Becky Wilkes, Carolyn Hollingsworth, Chip Standifer, Dan Kaufman, Darnell Wilburn, David Clifton Strawn, Doug Powell, Elena Sergiva, Hannah Elijah, Hopeton St. Clair Hibbert, Jennifer Richmond, Juan Carlos Rodriguez, Carrie Walter, Kemachat, Sarah Chanvamal, Mark Caceres, Mary Farmer, Shine Hang, Susan Peltzerson, Suzanne Thompson, Tom Meese, Trisha Glanister, and Zoltan Gerlecki. So I'm excited to have them, have all of the artists participating. I have a few install images so you can see what the work looks like at the library, as well as get the very first peek of the remodel from this library, which is really lovely. Okay. It looks really wonderful. And I will have these images available to all of the artists. I will send you a link to a Dropbox that you can download the images and have them for your files as well as to share. All right, so I'm done with all of my announcements except to introduce Gregory Harris, who I'm very excited and very thankful to have participate with us and to jury this exhibition. Gregory Harris is the Associate Curator of Photography at the High Museum of Art in Atlanta. He is a specialist in contemporary photography with a particular interest in documentary practice. Since joining the High in 2016, Harris has curated the exhibitions Way Out There, The Art of Southern Backroads, and Look Again, 40 Years of Collecting Photographs, as well as solo shows with Thomas Struth, Paul Graham, Amy Elkins, Mark Steinmetz, and William Christenberry. He recently led the expansion and installation of the photography department's new permanent collection galleries. Before joining the High, Harris was the assistant curator at the DePaul Art Museum in Chicago, where he organized several exhibitions, including Sonia Thompson, Glowing Wavelengths in Between, the Sochi Project, an Atlas of War and Tourism in the Caucasus, and Studio Mallet, Portraits from Mali. Harris is also the curator and author of the exhibition catalogs We Shall, Photographs by Paul D'Amato, Mark Sieber, Idle Structures, and Liminal Infrastructure. He previously held curatorial positions in the photography department at the Art Institute of Chicago, where he curated the exhibitions In the Vernacular and of National Interest. His essay, Photographs Still and Unfolding, was published by the McKinney Art Museum, San Antonio in 2016 as part of the book Telling Tales, Contemporary Narrative Photography. Harris has also contributed essays to monographs by Matthew Brandt, Emmy Elkins, and Jill Frank. In addition to his curatorial work, Harris is a founding editor of the photo book press Skylark Editions, served on the board of directors for Latitude, a community digital lab in Chicago, and is a member of the advisory council of Atlanta Celebrates Photography. He earned a BFA in photography from Columbia College Chicago and an MA in art history from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And I'm so excited to be able to have Greg join us today, as well as jury this exhibition. Greg has always been a great proponent and supporter of the Atlanta Photography Group. And we're so excited to have him join us. Okay, Greg, thank you so much. Okay.
Thanks,
and thank you all for joining us. I hope to see you at future events. Please be sure to check our website and our social media for all of our upcoming events and ways to register for those. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to you so you can, give us your overview and then chat with each of the artists.
Sure. So I just have some general remarks about the show, but before we jump into that, I just want to say thank you to APG and to Judy for inviting me to jury the exhibition. You all know this, but I think APG is a fantastic organization. They do such a great job of fostering community around photography in Atlanta through the exhibitions, the talks, the workshops, all the crit groups. They really engage such a broad group of makers and photography enthusiasts and raise the level of the quality of work and the level of discourse around photography in our city. I also want to say thank you to all of the artists who submitted to the exhibition. We had close to 100 photographers, so there's really overwhelming enthusiasm around this, and there were so many great pictures to choose from. And I'd also like to say thank you to the Buckhead Library for hosting the exhibition. It was great seeing the pictures installed all around the stacks. One of my favorite jobs that I've ever had was actually shelving books in the library at the Art Institute of Chicago. So it feels somewhat fitting that this is installed in a library. So in my role at the High, I look at countless pictures every day, work that's already in the collection, work that's being considered for acquisition, work that we're looking at while we're planning exhibitions. And as much as I love what I do as a curator, so much of my work with photographs is guided by larger plans that are set by other people. So strategic initiatives from the director or some kind of bureaucratic process, such as an exhibition proposal meeting. And in the midst of all that, it's easy to lose sight of why I wanted to get into this field. And that's because I love photographs and I love working with photographers. And so I so appreciate opportunities like this one because it gives me a chance to focus solely on that love of looking at photographs. So all the photographs gathered together in this exhibition show the broad and varied spectrum of contemporary photography. It really runs the gamut from socially engaged documentary work, evocative portraiture, work that innovatively experiments with process, and also brings in very thought-provoking conceptual approaches. Across these many strategies, some of the themes that really jumped out to me because a lot of the artists were addressing issues around identity. People were concerned with the impact that humans have on the environment. And all of them cause us to question our assumptions about the way we see the world. And others give us these moments of respite through contemplative depictions of the natural world. So those are kind of the big themes, kind of socially and environmentally concerned work, and then also this work that is very much about looking and really taking in the beauty of the world. But all of them across that, they demonstrate the transformative power of photographic images. It was a privilege to select such dynamic and thought-provoking images, and I look forward to hearing from all of the artists tell us more about their work. So I hope that this isn't too much of a disappointment to you, but I basically just picked the pictures that I liked from the work that was submitted. There isn't some kind of grand curatorial vision that's pulling all of these pictures together. That's somewhat of a challenge with such a broad group of work. So this is kind of PhotoBUCKHEAD : pictures Greg liked, if we can call it that. So we have many of the artists here, and so I'm hoping that a lot of them can jump in and tell us a little bit about their work. One of the things that was also really exciting for me about this is, every time I feel like I know, the photography world, or particularly the photography world here in Atlanta, there are all of these other photographers out there who I come across who I'm, not familiar with. And I think there were, of the, close to 100 photographers who submitted work, there were only a handful whose work I'd seen before. So it was eye-opening for me to be encountering all of this new work. So how do you want to proceed, Judy? You're muted.
I'm going to start with the very first image.
All right, let's go.
So all of the images are arranged by alphabetical order, only because that's kind of easier for our online presentation. If you guys noticed in the install photos, they're not actually arranged that way, although some of the artists, their work is, because it was very consistent, it is all together on the wall. So most of the artists, their work is together. Occasionally, somebody, if they had multiple images, may have been separated into another grouping. Okay. And our first artist is Castilla Lopez, and I believe Anna is here. Okay, she is.
Hello.
There she is. She's here, Greg.
Okay, Anna, can you tell us a little bit about your work?
Yes, absolutely. This image is called Forgotten.
Anna, I'm sorry, I'm just going to break in. Could you either move a little closer to your mic or speak up a little bit, because I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yes, sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, this image is called Forgotten, or in Spanish, Olvidada. It was actually inspired by a 1939 painting by Antonio Ruiz, a Mexican surrealist painter. And I made this image thinking about, the painting is called The Dream of the Malinche. And I made this image thinking about cultural identity and how is viewed here, but also how I feel about it. It's a self-portrait. The two of my works kind of work together as self-portraits, but this work in particular, it kind of talks about the female identity and the misplacement of myself, how I culturally feel misplaced usually, how I sometimes have a hard time connecting to people, just because of all the cultural barriers that lie within, that are sometimes inexplicable. And that's why I depict the two women with their faces covered, because I really wanted to emphasize how we view women in Mexican identity, but how we view Mexican people in the United States as well. I think there's a constant misrepresentation and a constant racism against Hispanics. So I really wanted to to show that in a almost romanticized way with the color palette. So yes, those are my works.
Thanks. Yeah, I really appreciated how, it brought all of these issues around identity, to the fore, and particularly to, a group of people that is often overlooked or misrepresented or mischaracterized in popular culture and popular media. So I really appreciate how you were centering and foregrounding, your identity as a Mexican woman.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Anna. Okay. All right. And our next artist is Andy Steele, but I do not see Andy in our list. If you're here, Andy, raise your hand, but I don't see you. Okay. So he has 3 images in the exhibition, and they're very colorful.
Yeah, so I was really struck just by the distinct visual aesthetic of this work. It was unlike anything that I'd ever seen. The vibrant colors. It's he talks a little bit about in his artist statement about an interest in playing with your sense of perception and also trying to capture a sense of the paranormal. So the pictures were just kind of wonderfully disorienting and eye-catching.
All right, wonderful. All right, and then Becky Wilkes, and Becky is here as our next artist, and she has 3 images in the exhibition. I'm going to show them while either Greg or Becky or both of you are chatting about them. I'm just
Becky,
kind of go back and
why don't you start for us if you wouldn't mind?
Hi, I'm Becky. It's funny, I've done this a couple of times and I'm really unprepared to talk today, but I live on the lakefront, and during a drought, 2014-15, I collected every piece of debris on 1 mile stretch of the lakefront. And then it was just kind of like trying to figure out what this stuff was and what to do with all that I ended up photographing and collecting. And so these are typologies of either wrappers, styrofoam, and glass bottles. And every item that I collected kind of spoke to me in a different format, that made me want to treat it differently, if that makes sense. Obviously, the less identifiable the object was, like in a wrapper or a fragment of a wrapper or a fragment of styrofoam, you couldn't identify what it came from. And so these became less rigid. And things like the bottles, where you clearly knew it was either a Heineken bottle or a Schlitz bottle or, whatever. There was an understanding of what I was dealing with. This one, I felt like it was glass beads of some sort.
And so I was really struck by how very starkly the work of addressed issues around throwaway culture, and how it became like this typology of the things that we senselessly use once and cast off. And it was such an impactful way of visualizing the impact that we have through consumption on the natural world.
Thank you. When I first started the project, I didn't understand why this material was in the lakefront, but after a few flooded events, I understood that most of this is thrown into the ditches along the roadside and then flushes into the waterways when it floods. So that's why the project is called Ditched.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that it's that kind of creates a sense of dissonance, because the work itself is very beautiful, but it's sort of heart-wrenching to kind of think about where.
I hope so. It's really nice. It's really nice when you get to see all like 8,000 items in one space, and you're kind of surrounded by what was left or found or washed into this 1 mile piece of lakefront.
So just a question about your process. Do you make these collages, or, arrange them in a studio and then photograph them, or are they photographed separately and then collaged together digitally?
Everything's photographed individually and then collaged digitally. I could never put it together where they look like this. Yeah, they're dirty and they, it just would never work.
No, thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Becky. Okay, and Carolyn Hollingsworth is our next artist, and Carolyn is here as well. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh. Take it away.
So these are two images from a series that I sort of happened into creating. From early in the pandemic, I just couldn't bring myself to pick up my good camera and go take pictures of beautiful things. I just couldn't see the world. Everything was so overwhelming. But I kept having to go out at night into my little backyard. I'm looking over this way because it's right over there. And I have a string of lights around my yard that cast multiple shadows. And then there's tennis court lights in the next subdivision. And they cast their own lights. At any rate, I began to notice that I had these overlapping shadows on the walls. And I started to see them sort of like you see pictures in clouds. And I realized that not only was I seeing pictures in clouds, but that they were reflecting what was going on in the times. And so I think of them as sort of, many of them, there are a lot of others, as sort of dark fairy tales and intimations of, I don't know, conspiracy theories or, things like that. But then this one, the Claire story one, I must have misspelled that. It's not so much that as it is, I just thought that one was beautiful. So that's why it's in there. But the other one being the Chimera, and then some of the others where there's definitely spooky things in the shadows.
Yeah, they definitely have this sense of feeling haunted.
Yes.
But they're while spooky, they're pretty, they're beautiful at the same time. And I think they're, as much as they're kind of unnerving, they're also somewhat calming. So I appreciate that, given all of the chaos that's going on in the world right now.
I did find it as, if whatever you can express is more manageable, instead of just having this completely amorphous sense of dread or puzzlement or confusion. If you can see what's in it, then you have some control. So.
Are they single exposures, or have you combined multiple images?
No, they're all single exposures. Some of them have had virtually nothing done to them except tweaking the contrast and that sort of things. With others, I've maybe done some rotating. I've done some very finicky adjustments of exposure, contrast, and all of that sort of thing. But it's entirely unlike anything else I've ever done. It's done with a cell phone, and I don't have a fancy iPhone. I've just got this, whatever this is. I don't even remember. But I found that sort of freeing too, because there's only so much I can do with the cell phone. But I took a class with John McWilliams some years ago, and the assignment was found cameras. So I said I wanted to find a Hasselblad. He said that wouldn't happen. And but the idea was to use a primitive camera or a broken camera or a camera with glitches and distortions, that sort of thing. And then use its parameters as the inspiration. Well, one of the things that I found that I just love now with the cell phone is that I could put it like into my tomato plants and look through them and look up, and you know, just because of the size of it and the light weight, I could handle it in a different way than I could my my Sony and, you know, a lens that's 10 inches long. So anyway,
It's amazing what some small restrictions, you know, can do for the creative.
Right. Yes.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Well,
Great, thanks, Carolyn. Okay, and your spelling was probably fine. I think it was my spelling because I had to type that in, and I think it was my fingers.
okay.
I'll fix it.
It's okay.
All right, and then our next artist is Chip Standifer, and this is his piece in the exhibition. And Chip is here also as my co-host.
Hi, everybody. This one, the image you're looking at is not exactly the same as the image that you see on the wall, because the image on the wall is pigment on vellum, and it's backed in gold leaf. So it's the same image, but it has a very different quality when you see it in person. This project I sort of started by accident. Everything that's in it is somehow related to my family. And I like the idea of the gold or the sterling silver I use, sort of conveying the preciousness that these somewhat ordinary things have to me.
Yeah, this one, you know, now you're throwing me for a loop because you know, and having not seen the piece in person, it brings in a whole other layer. But I mean, I was thinking this one, you know, just the beautiful quality of lighting. It looked like a Dutch still life, like a memento mori. You know, the fact that the roses aren't pristine, that they're just, you know, a couple days past their prime. You know, that there's this sense of something kind of something beautiful, slowly fading away. It was very poetic.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Let's see, I'm still here. Okay. All right. Dan Kaufman has 2 images in the show, and Dan was going to join us, but had something that he wasn't sure he was going to get back in time.
So Dan is not here?
He is not here.
All right. Well then, so yeah, this is a good one to talk about. So what I was taken with in these pictures was just the starkness, the minimal approach that they had. You know, that they kind of reminded me of abstract painting, of color field painting, of minimal art. You're just kind of finding those moments out in the world, in the built environment. They seem to have like a really striking sense of color as well.
Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to add to this one, and this kind of reminds me, and Jennifer is here, and when we get to hers, this reminds me of what Jennifer does. This is the side of a large tanker ship, and it's just the colors and the rust off of that ship, and I think the reflection in the water. And Jennifer does a similar thing with dumpsters that she'll tell us about because she is here when we get to her in just a little bit. All right, and our next artist is Darnell Wilburn, and Darnell is here. And Darnell has 2 images in the exhibition.
So these 2 images are part of a larger series, and it centers Black women, and it's a narrative tableaus, and the idea is a little bit about representation, but also kind of remixing the idea of Americana.
Yeah, I loved how, you know, they show these really kind of quiet, poignant moments of domestic life that they, you know, they have such a sense of pathos and compassion. The lighting, I mean, clearly you're taking, you know, a lot of considerations with the lighting, and that really just like makes moments which seem like you just kind of stumbled across them. But clearly there's some elements of, you know, time and consideration that have gone into making them, you know, and I also just like love the expressions on these women's faces, like these wry little smiles. I mean, they like, there's also like clearly a sense of humor that's in these pictures. So there's, you know, there's a levity in them that I really appreciated.
Great, thank you. All right, and then we have David Clifton Strawn, and David is here, and David has this 1 image.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So this image is from a series that I'm currently working on, which is portraits of Atlanta creatives. And this particular image was kind of that happy accident that happens in portraiture, which one of the reasons I like portraiture so much is it often tends to be a collaborative process with the person I'm photographing. And I had asked this gentleman to come and pose for me after I saw some paintings that he had done of Ruth Bader Ginsburg that I really liked a lot. And when he showed up, he had this jacket with him. And I was really struck in the moment of seeing the jacket because I'm 59 and having lived through, the AIDS crisis and this gentleman here who is 20 to 25 years younger than me, with a piece of clothing that represented that he was still kind of engaged in the same fight. It just really struck me. And at the end of the photo shoot, I asked him if I could photograph him in that jacket, and he agreed. And it's the image that I ended up using, which was not what I intended originally to use with him, but it became an important image to me from the series. I kept kind of returning to it as we were working our way through the election season. It just was kind of a place where I could sit and meditate and just think about the arc of the civil rights movement in America, in particular around LGBTQIA concerns and also the Black Lives Matter movement. And I was playing with this kind of lighting and posing technique from like Renaissance, like kind of Titian or Claude Lorraine type of lighting, but I wanted to take that style and then put like a contemporary subject matter into it. And that's what this image is all about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for a great portrait, particularly one that's well considered with all the elements. And what I liked about this one was, the pose, well, it feels like somewhat traditional is rather unusual for a portrait. The fact that his back is turned to you initially and then around, that just makes for something that's a little bit more dynamic. And then these little signifiers, with his jacket, the earring, like that kind of like builds a story. You kind of get a sense of who he is and what he is as a person, what he stands for. So I liked how you pulled all that together in the image.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you, guys. All right. Our next artist is Doug Powell, and this is a single image from Doug in our exhibition.
Hi,
And
glad
Doug
to be
is
part
here.
of the show. This is a triptych, and I've been intrigued by trying to take 3 images and put them together. These are taken of reflections of water. There was a popular song, a Tin Pan Alley song known as By the Light of the Silvery Moon from like 1909 that struck me in my mind and my memory. And when I look at these, it reminds me of the light of the moon reflecting on water. So I'm very glad that it was selected.
Yeah, it's a very calm, quiet, beautiful image. The texture, the very limited color palette. It was. I appreciated just how calming it was and how it was seeming to do a lot with very few elements.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. And our next image is by Elena Sergiva, and Elena has joined us.
Hi.
Hi.
Greetings from Boston.
Hello. Can you tell us a little bit about your work?
Yeah, sure. This picture was taken in Ecuador, in a small rural city, Puerto Lopez. I was traveling there, just literally came for a couple of days. And I was very lucky. It was some celebration outside, and it's so favorable for taking pictures. I was just out with my camera, and I didn't have some special meaning taking these pictures. This is how I work. I just approach people, I talk to them or not to talk to them, and take pictures. So, and I approached this lady, and she's This picture title is Reina de Puerto Lopez, which is in Spanish, and that means Queen of Puerto Lopez. And she definitely was carrying herself as a queen of this city. And she immediately started to pose. And of course, I was glad to take pictures. And then later, I realized that it's interesting, the perspective of this picture. She's so tall, and like she's above the whole Puerto Lopez city, and also this juxtaposition to the environment, to other common people there. I just found this picture interesting. That's it.
Yeah, it's such a striking portrait. I mean, she has, just like, an incredible gaze and expression on her face, and the way that she's holding herself, she has such confidence. And it's just got all of those elements that make for a great portrait. And then the fact that you can see, everything else that's going on in the background, that, this is just kind of a normal day, or maybe is it a street fair? Is that what's happening?
It was some street fair, yeah.
Yeah, but it's such, such kind of humble everyday circumstances, and she's there and she exudes, such pride and confidence. It's a really beautiful image.
Thank you for selecting.
Okay, great, thank you, Elena. Okay. All right, and then we have 2 images by Hannah Elijah, and I do not think Hannah has joined us today. I don't see her.
All right. So yeah, are there 2? Yeah, there are 2.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So I just thought these were, kind of beautiful pictures of, ordinary everyday life out in the city. It's kind of, had this, this sensibility of someone, like a William Eggleston, who's keyed into, the color, the composition, but just finding these moments of beauty that only photography really kind of pulls out of the flow of everyday life.
Okay, wonderful. All right. And our next artist is Hopeton St. Clair Hibbert, and he has 3 images in the exhibition. And Hopeton, you're here, I think you were.
I am.
Yes, there you are. Okay, great, perfect.
Okay, yeah, my name is Hopeton St. Clair. Thank you, Judith, for again letting me participate in these events. So this series is a Cotton Ghost series, and it came about kind of like a ghost. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't shooting this on purpose. It just I was actually shooting some models at the time, and I glanced to the right, and I guess these were curtains that were hung upside down and knotted so they weren't dragging on the floor. And so I mostly shoot abstract, highly textured things, and usually not human. So when I developed this and flipped it upside down, I kind of saw what it was going to be when I started shooting it. So when I obviously flipped it around in Lightroom, it kind of looked more like a portrait. Kind of became more than I thought it actually was going to be. And so I kept it in black and white. And so, like I said, the concept Cotton Ghost kind of came about because as I looked at it, it looked like a portrait and also kind of had like a ghostly vibe to it. So just coming up with the concept of cotton, obviously the fabric's made of cotton, ghostly images. And so it all kind of brought me together as far as I brought it all together, kind of symbolizing the spirit of my people in America and what they've been through due to the need for cotton. So the titles of these are, anywhere from MLK, Martin Luther King, or Mr. King, to Mr. Till, and a lot of other fallen African Americans during this time being in America due to obviously the need for cotton building this country. So that's kind of where the Cotton Ghost came from. So there's a few more images of these in the series. And, I've been pretty excited about it because this is the first time they've been exhibited, first time they've been shown. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for submitting this work and for telling us about it. I mean, this work is really, really striking. I mean, there's so much going on in these pictures. You're working, with really minimal aesthetic, but the lighting, the content. I mean, you pull it all together in a way that's so simple and so direct to talk about, you know, a history of violence and of oppression. And, you know, it just lays everything out in such a you know, such a direct and poignant way. It's really powerful work. So thank you.
Thank you so much for selecting me. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Hopeton. All right, and then we have Jennifer McKinnon. And Jennifer is here and she has 3 images in the exhibition.
Hi, do you want me to go ahead and start?
Sure.
Okay. So these 3 are part of a series called Nature's Petrified Cities. And they are actually all images of dumpsters, close-ups of dumpsters, as Judy mentioned. That's sort of my, like Becky, I enjoy dealing with trash apparently. But these came about because I think during the pandemic, I was really missing traveling, and I'm from the West Coast originally. And so my obsession with the ocean was coming on strong. And I started to look through all these photos I had taken while traveling of landscapes, and I'm not a landscape photographer at all. But what I decided to do was start layering close-up images of dumpsters to reimagine the natural world using a most unnatural material, and that being dumpsters. So each of these has about probably at least 10 different dumpster images layered on top. So it's like a digital collage is sort of what they all entail. So.
Yes, these, you know, as I was looking through these, like, you know, I did a first pass, and I initially thought that they were cyanotypes.
Uh-huh.
But you know, they have such great texture. The color is, you know, is really beautiful. And then you go and you read about them, and you have this like, huh? So you know, they're like, they're beautiful, and then also at the same time really, you know, puzzling, you know, to think of like what the content is. But just, you know, like that disconnect between the form and the content is you know, something that just it really just catches you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's my goal is to always make dumpsters not look like photographs or dumpsters, but to look like art. And I think that this series really pushed me out of my comfort zone. So I really appreciate you choosing them, just because it encourages me to keep going in this direction, which is definitely more, I guess, personal, just from the standpoint of I'm really, you know, pushing my limits as to what feels comfortable.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
That's great.
Wonderful. All right. And then we have 3 images from Juan Carlos Rodriguez, and Juan had registered, but I don't see him here unless he's under another name. But okay. I don't think he's here.
Yeah. So these I thought were, you know, again, beautiful, really just elegant images of natural forms. I'm guessing that they are mosquitoes, but just, you know, the way that they were done, you know, close up and abstracted, the play with the depth of field, just, you know, transforming something that is often such a nuisance and a pest. Maybe someone just commented dragonflies, maybe, possibly. Yeah, hard to
I don't
tell.
know. I wish he was here so he could tell us.
I am but a lowly art historian, not an entomologist. So I would know, but you know, they just had a really distinct aesthetic that I liked.
All right. Yeah, I thought they were very interesting. And then Carrie Walter, and Carrie normally joins us, but I do not see her here either. And she has 2 images.
Yeah, again, you know, another artist with a really distinct aesthetic. Sorry, my phone keeps buzzing in the background. It's just distracting me. Yeah, so she talked in her artist statement about, you know, the interaction between humans and the natural world, and just the way that she captured, you know, these animals. They're almost like portraits of animals, And the kind of the soft muted black and white palette was really engaging.
Mhm. And then our next artist is Chemichat, and I don't see him either, so I don't think he has joined us either.
Yeah, so I was taken by the the way that this work made that contrast between the natural world and the human-built environment so stark and so apparent, and it just kind of confronted you with with the issues around climate change and the way that we have messed up the planet. And yet really beautiful photograph at the same time.
Absolutely. All right. And then we have Mark Caceres, and Mark is here, and Mark has 3 images.
Yeah, these weren't really conceived as a group, but I think they do go together. I think what they have in common is there's a bit of a tension between what you would expect in the situation and what you see. For example, this one here was taken on Valentine's Day weekend, and you have this couple that are dressed the same way, yet they seem to be fairly disconnected in their own worlds. The portrait of the mother and daughter that we had before this, you see the intensity of the relationship, but yet a certain tension with the mother-daughter relationship. And then the third one, you think of pageant queens as having this kind of artificial smile, but it was interesting to have them just in a completely different environment. Actually, a gas station, only because it was the middle of the day and the light was very harsh. I needed to get them in the shadows, and that was the closest area. But I like how it kind of highlights more their poise and dignity, and less on the kind of beauty aspect. So.
Yeah, I was really taken with how you seem to capture a sense of their character. The poses are all really distinct expressions, and also the fact that there's always more than one person in the pictures, and I feel like making a portrait of one person is hard enough, and then you throw another person into the mix, and it multiplies it. It doesn't double the complexity. It makes it infinitely more complicated. This one particularly, way that the mother is looking directly into the camera and the daughter's looking off to the side a little bit, and yet their gaze is no less intense, despite how they're kind of confronting the camera or ignoring it in different ways. So I just thought they were really powerful portraits.
Great, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have one image from Mary Farmer, and I do not see her here.
Yes, so this, sorry. This one, is again a beautiful picture of of the natural world. I believe it's Hawaii.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, it's just how can you not love a beautiful black and white photograph of of the oceans?
Right, and then we have 3 images from Shine, and Shine is not here either.
So I don't know a whole lot about this particular body of work, and Shine didn't share much of an artist statement. But they all seem, they're all vessels. This way, in this case, a drum. But cultural objects that kind of bear marks of use, that kind of carry some kind of story along with them. They evoke this sense of community through the the hands that have made them and used them. So I thought that was powerful.
Mm-hmm. And then Susan Peltzerson, and Susan is here.
Hi, Greg.
Hey, Susan, how are you?
How are you? Thank you so much for being the juror and for including my image.
Sure. For submitting.
Thank you. This image for me has a lot to do with, as a praying hands, with brotherly love and am I my brother's keeper, bringing up some of those issues. I'm interested in the sacred and how it intersects with the ordinary. And that's been one of the things I've been exploring in this image. So it was done originally praying hands by Albrecht Dürer, who's a German artist in the 1500s. And there have been mass productions for many, many years of these hands as, you know, in clay, wood, glass, whatever, lots of materials. And I think they're still powerful and still stand today.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's such an iconic form, you know, both, you know, for, you know, religious iconography and the history of art. But that, you know, I was taken with how, you know, it was in such, you know, a seemingly humble situation, you know, the windowsill, and then the way the image is mirrored in the glass and that wonderful texture that you have all around it. It has, and like, there's just so much feeling that's bound up in the image.
Thank you. I felt that as well. And also just the, you know, just the wood, the kind of tattered wood, the splinters sticking out, the paint or whatever that is on the image. And then as well as, you know, in this age of COVID, praying hands next to praying hands, you know, that double image, you know, as we've all dealt with isolation. So I think there's a lot in here that I was feeling as I photographed it.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Susan. And we have an image now by Suzanne Thompson, and she was here.
I'm here.
Okay,
I'm here.
great.
Still here. Thank you so much for including me in the show. I really appreciate it, this image.
Of course.
I do actually a lot of photography of nature, but the other area of interest for me is story. And whether it's an experience I've had that has a story that I remember, or as I photograph something, I wonder what the story is behind it, behind what I'm photographing. And this one is kind of both that. It's I took it this past summer at a cottage that my best friend and I have gone to. We have many wonderful memories there. And also because the cottage is so old, I've wondered about the stories of the people who have gone in and out of those doors. That's from the main part of the house out to this screened in porch. And when the light was just hitting it, I just literally stopped in the tracks and grabbed my camera and laid down on the floor. So it's kind of a combination.
Yes, you know, I feel like I've used the word beautiful, you know, far too many times today, but I was struck by how, you know, the low angle, the beautiful light, the sense of texture, how it's so ordinary and so kind of commonplace, and yet the way that you framed it, the way that the light's streaming in, it just, you know, elevated something that was so humble to something that's, you know, that's really immaculate.
Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Suzanne. Okay. All right, and then we have Tom Meese, and there are two images from Tom in the exhibition. And he was here. You here?
I'm here.
You are here. Yay. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay. Can you see me? I can't see me. I think the camera's not working or something.
We can
see you from the nose down.
From the nose down.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's better.
All right, then I'll turn it off. There. Okay, I never like to talk about my pictures because I just look for interesting images, and that's what every photographer does. So what is there to say? This one, that's what this is. And this one actually is the second triptych of reflections in this show. That's what that is. Along the belt line, there were these curvy, wavy, flower-like silver sculpture things. So I took pictures of the reflections plus the grass behind them, and then made this triptych from it, which I don't usually do.
Yeah, but both of these images is, as different as they are, I mean, they're very different kinds of strategies for making pictures. Obviously, they're both, kind of what's found out in the world, but they both have, the sense of texture and light that makes it they're all very tactile. Almost like you can feel every little detail of the fabric, the plants and whatnot.
I've got nothing to add. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thanks, Tom. And Trisha Glanister. And Trisha has two images, and she is here.
Hi. Thank you for selecting my work. And I think like so many people starting in March, I just started spending a lot of time outside and just walking around and trying to block out everything else that was going on and just trying to focus on just the beauty and the surroundings. And, like Carolyn had mentioned, and when she was talking, that a lot of my images were taken with my phone because, again, I did spend so much time outside. And this one right here, this one was taken in Wilmington, North Carolina, because my in-laws have a place there, like a little small place near the beach. And they let each of the family members come and just kind of take it over for just a week or two, just to have a change of scenery. And so I really did the same thing there that I was doing here, and just kept walking around and taking pictures wherever I went, a lot of time on the beach and a lot of time down at Fort Fisher, and really wasn't looking to make a series of photos. I was just kind of documenting what I was doing. And then when I started looking at all the images that I had together, I just saw how one started fitting together. And I started also working a lot with like grids and triptychs and things as well, which I think was sort of like a response to trying to have this like visual order and visual and containment in a world that felt very disordered. So it was very nice to me to like put these things together and to find these relationships between things. And in this one right here, like the middle one, I love shadows. I have so many photos of shadows on my computer, but I really, really love this one. And I posted it on Instagram, and I had a friend who's been a great advocate and bought several photos, and she had texted me and said, I really love this, but I would love it like if it was in a grouping, and which I thought was just a great idea. And it was just so fun to work with this one because I knew that she liked the feel, this very ethereal feel. And I thought, well, how do I keep that feel? How do I keep it looking sort of moonlit and magical? And so that it's not just simply a botanical that you look out on the wall. I wanted it to have that little kind of spooky, magical feel, and work with that one for a long time. I would think I'd finished it, and because I had just so many images of things that I'd taken of photos around my house from all the things I'd planted, just trying to distract myself. And I would think I'd finished it, and then I'd go away from it for like 2 days, and then I would come back and go, no, it's not like quite what I want. And it was like, really, I was just trying to create this flow so that you would go from image to image. And I wanted you to kind of dance around like in the center image that sort of looked moonlight, and then to end up in the other one and come back down. And I wanted it to have like very unique parts to it that they flow together. But if you look closely, you realize like, well, okay, but that's not actually part of the plant that was in the one before, but it looks similar. And so I just wanted to have very interesting elements to each thing, but yet keep this flow going through. So that was a lot of what I just work with during this time. It's just the nature around me and the peace and calm and beauty.
Yeah, they also have these great harmonies between the pictures and the way that you create a narrative just by placing one or more images together. They kind of speak to one another, and you kind of build a story that's abstract, but still is it's really engaging, and they have such a dynamism just with the simple forms.
Thank you, and thank you for selecting them.
Great. Thanks, Trisha. And last but not least, and because Zoltan has been in several exhibitions and his name starts with a Z, he ends up being last. I'm going to have to change up my order in the future, but Zoltan has three images in the exhibition.
That's right. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. And sorry, I was a little bit celebrating my blue day, and I'm very happy about it, to be honest with you. And I guess nice to meet you, Gregory. I hope you read my artist statement. So this series, I created one planet, which is our planet, and 13 other design planet with a different motion, feelings, as I put together this piece. Well, these three things comes together. One is photography, scanography, and of course, post-production. I submitted this work because I think it's right for what I was submitting, and it's very decorative, even though it's a little bit strong. But I'm very happy I did it. Each planet is hard because if you see my background, you can see the whole series. And for example, the joy planet, you can see, because what's going on today in every day, today is a good day basically, but in generally, it's insane. So, so in my work series is basically, it's very simple, is how I feel about living my peace in the earth, which is our planet. And that is my message for it. And thank you again. Thank you, Judith. And that's a shorter version of the artist statement, actually. So, but thank you again. And nice to meet you, Gregory.
You too. Thanks for telling us about the work. Yeah, I thought that these the metaphor that they were using, of a broken planet, of using detritus and discarded broken things to talk about various emotional states, and then to extend that into more of a a global celestial field. They're really powerful. And yet so simple, so elegant, but they give you a moment of pause and contemplation.
Well, thank you so much.
So that's everyone.
That's everyone. So thank you all. I am going to stop my share and open up the screen. If any of you, we obviously have finished early because we had a really good chat, and everybody did a great job of being concise with their statements, which was fabulous. But if you all have any questions or any additional comments, you are welcome to, open up your mic and ask, okay, either another artist or Greg or, anything, so. Questions? Comments? Y'all are so shy.
Like everyone's mind is elsewhere today.
I know, definitely. So it's definitely been it's definitely been an interesting day, a week as well.
So Judy, I have a question.
Yes,
when
ma'am.
are we able to get into what are the hours of the library?
That is a really good question, and I'm so glad you asked. So the library is currently closed to the public, okay? It will open at some point. We are just not sure when, but when it does open to the public, the work will still be on the walls. They have nothing scheduled for after this. So we will let you all know. So those of you in the Atlanta area, you'll be able to go by and take a look at during regular library hours. You can check books out, you can drop books off, but they're only doing curbside, so you really can't go into the library, unfortunately, right now. So I am going to be posting some of the install photos so people will be able to see those, but I do recommend going by because, you know, like Chip said with his image, the printing on the vellum and the gold leaf backing is just stunning. Hopeton's images together just really are just really dynamic. I mean, all the images just look so fabulous in the exhibition that I hope those of you in the Atlanta area will have a chance to really go by and take a look once they do open to the public. But, you know, it's been a year, so.
Hey, Greg, I've got a comment and a question for you. So thank you for including me in the show. And I have to say, you know, I know that you started off by saying that you chose these pieces just based on personal preference, but the collection as a whole is really, really strong. It's a really wonderful collection, you know, seen from beginning to end. And I was just wondering, when you're looking at photographs, what are the qualities, what are the components of photographs that are important to you and that were important while you were choosing these pieces?
Usually, you know, with something like this, when you're, you know, looking at so many pictures, you know, Judy, how many individual images were submitted?
You know what? I didn't go back and look, but there was quite a few. I know you had quite a few to work through.
It had to be north of 300 photographs.
Oh yeah, it definitely was. Yeah,
So-
there was more than 300 images.
So sometimes, what I did, I went through and I did an initial pass, and it was a lot of like what were the images that like really caught my eye? Just like, you know, looking at them quickly. What something that had a, you know, a really distinct visual aesthetic, had some kind of content that was really engaging. So I kind of like set those aside. I was going to look at those again, and then I went through and I looked at everything. And read the statements, because sometimes, you know, there's so much work that it doesn't necessarily reveal itself just by like kind of what it shows and what you see, that there's other ideas going on. You need a little bit more background. And so then I was trying to look at like, you know, what had a compelling idea, and then trying to reconcile those two things. And what was, you know, what had a great idea and what had great execution, and what was, you know, where were those two elements coming together? Because sometimes like, you know, artists have, you know, really compelling thoughts and it doesn't come through in the work, or they don't quite know how to express it. And so I wanted to find work that, or they, you know, have great technical execution, but there's not a lot else there besides, you know, like, well, this was just like a pretty picture. And so I was trying to find, you know, work that was striking a balance between those two things. Because, you know, I find that if no matter how good your idea is, if you can't really execute it, then it's not going to hold the viewer. So I was just trying to find, you know, the work that struck that balance. And then, you know, as looking through it, talking more, and then seeing everyone else talk about it again, clearly there are, you know, concerns that are just out in the world that photographers and artists are thinking about and that I'm aware of, and that kind of strike a chord with me. And so there were things that kind of kept popping up, you know, like, you know, a lot of people are thinking about identity, particularly around race and gender, and how that's expressed, or how it's kind of, held back for certain people. Obviously issues around the environment. Of course, the kind of psychological, emotional impact of the pandemic, and trying to find ways to process that or find refuge from that. There's a lot of work that was dealing with those kinds of ideas. So there are a lot of themes that were popping up through there as well. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. That's great feedback.
Well, I think I forgot to
have
say.
a question.
Oh, sorry. Who has a question?
I had a question. Okay, I was wondering, as you were looking through work, does it make a difference in your mind in terms of if everything submitted is more of a series? They obviously go together as opposed to separate images, or does it make a difference to you? separate unrelated images that are brought in.
In this kind of context, I generally appreciate seeing work that's from one series, mostly because I think a lot of photographers are accustomed to working, as a series, and the images they hold together, or they're thought of kind of cohesively as a group, and you get a sense for the depth of the work when there's more than one. When it's just kind of a random collection, it's kind of hard to get a sense of, like, what are you thinking about? What are you trying to do here? And I think, I don't know if it was capped, but I think, most people submitted somewhere between 1 and 5 pictures. And, if you had 5 pictures, but they were from 5 different series, it's kind of hard to get a sense for what someone's trying to do, either conceptually or aesthetically. So I like seeing kind of a coherent group of pictures. It's often how I think about pictures, and how I'm been trained and accustomed to working with pictures. So yeah.
Thank you.
I know it's hard, but when you only have a few slots to work with, kind of the more of one thing that you can show tends to be.
And I asked Greg to pick a certain amount of images, and also to include some alternates, and we took all of the images, and I don't know how this always works out, but they all just fit in the place that was available perfectly.
So Doug dropped a question into the chat box.
Yeah.
And actually, that's kind of amazing that it all fit in the space, because I had no idea how big anything was, or even what the space was. So that's just fortuitous.
Yeah, I didn't either. And it's just like, I was just like, well, we'll just hope for the best. So
yeah, usually, I'm working with a very specific space, and, I know exactly what the objects are. And so that's, there's a bit of, just the math of what fits and what doesn't that goes into the decision-making process. So Doug asked, he's curious, how important is fine art photography to the High's overall collection? As the photography curator, I would say it's damn important to the High's collection. It's, well, for one thing, if you break it down by number, the photography collection is the single largest collection in the museum. So it accounts for, at my last count, 42% of the objects in the High's collection are photographs. So that's pretty significant. And I think it's also one of the most distinctive collections, at the museum. Like, obviously, we collect European art, we collect, historic American art, contemporary art, folk and self-taught art. We have fantastic work in all of those areas, but the photography collection, probably right up there with the folk and self-taught art collection and the historic decorative arts collection, is really distinctive among American museums, particularly because it's such a comprehensive archive of photography made in the American South. So that, it has something that makes it stand out from a lot of other collections. And so that really sets it apart. We're also the only collection at the museum that rotates our galleries with great frequency. Obviously, photographs are sensitive to light, so we can't leave them up for extended periods of time. So we're probably one of the more visible and dynamic departments within the museum, because every 6 months we're doing something totally different. We're reimagining everything that we do every 6 months. Whereas, a lot of the other departments, they maybe change out 1 or 2 pieces here and there as something goes out on loan, or a new acquisition is made, or something needs to, receive some sort of conservation or be reframed. But basically, they're pretty static, and they just, they set it, they forget it. And in photo, we're always rethinking how we're trying to tell the story of the history of photography, or about one particular artist's work. So it's very dynamic and fluid, and we're kind of always running on the hamster wheel, trying to figure out how to keep that space programmed in an exciting way. I also think photography is one of the most relatable and relevant media in that the museum shows. Obviously, everyone has made a picture. Everyone looks at hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures every day. So it's a language that everyone speaks. And I think it's people get photography in a way that they maybe don't get other media. It's so much more accessible and less intimidating. And so I think it's, you know, people seek it out when they're at the museum. And, you know, hopefully we can kind of bring them in with a certain expectation and then give them something that's, you know, really revelatory that maybe they didn't expect to see when they, you know, when they showed up at the museum.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm. But if you asked any of the other curators, I'm sure that they would say the photography. we have 2 curators in the photography department. Every other department's only got 1. So I think that's, we're not competitive about these things, but.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I have one, Greg.
Okay, Becky.
Yeah, so when you curate a show, what's your thought process around movement of work, or what could we take away that, like, if we curate our own shows somewhere, how do you put it together where it makes the most sense, or what do you look for? Does that make sense?
I don't know if I'm entirely clear about what you're asking. I mean, I think, you know, there are a lot of different considerations, partly, you know, depending on what's the space you're working with, what's the work that you have at hand. But generally, you know, you want to create a sense of some kind of narrative where it builds, and there's a sense of flow, but also that it's not static and uniform all the way through. I think unless it's, you know, a particular kind of work, usually you want to see some kind of variation in scale and the kind of the spacing of the work, so that it feels, you know, a little more dynamic, that there's a sense of cadence as you're moving through the space. But like all of those considerations are really dependent on the particular factors that you have at hand. If it's a solo show, obviously there's more consistency in the work. If it's a group show, there are a lot of different elements that you're trying to balance with one another. So it's one of those questions that's hard to answer in the abstract, because it's different every single time. Like you're more or less reinventing the wheel with every project, which is part of what makes it such a, you know, fun and exciting kind of work to do. But it also feels like you're starting from zero every time, because you're learning about the work, you're learning about, you know, you're rethinking the space. There's, you know, because, you know, also, you know, we literally rebuild the spaces for a lot of the shows, depending on which galleries they're in. So it's, you know, even though it's in the same gallery, the walls are in different places, they're different colors, the lighting is different. So you really tailor everything to what the work is. So that's a tough one.
That helps, because I think it you know, it is so mind-boggling, but it's nice to know you're mind-boggled. So I don't know, I think that helps for me.
Yeah, we work with a model. So we have a scaled model of all of our galleries, and we scale the work, and it's like a little dollhouse. Place the picture just to kind of get a sense, like, does this fit? Does that work with that? Do we need to really rethink how this, like, is this general flow working? And then we lay the work out in the galleries. We set it down on the floor, and then we sit with it and we move it around. And it usually takes several days where you're just moving pictures all over the place, trying to figure out how it works. And then they go up on the wall, and then inevitably the director walks through and says he doesn't like something, and then you have to rehang it all again. And but, you know, it's a fluid process.
My process at the gallery and for APG shows is not quite I wish I had scale models to work with. That would be amazing. But essentially all of the APG shows are group shows. And even though people say like what size the work is, it comes in a little differently. It all looks kind of different. And I just kind of get the work in and kind of lean it up against the walls, and then figure out kind of like what Greg said, is which things work together as far as like scale or color or shape or subject matter, and also try to create something that is dynamic, so it doesn't look so monotonous. I call it monotonous across the wall, that you have different heights and 3 stacked or 2 stacked or a big one and small ones, and just to keep some flow to it. And I try to organize the images. I don't have quite the same parameters, that it feels like when you're walking through, it has some sort of flow to it, that you kind of transition from this group of images to that group of images. And it's not this hard break that's really jolting, that they kind of flow nicely from one grouping to another. So. Well, if there are no more questions or comments, thank you all so much for joining us. Greg, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed your selections for this exhibition. And I hope, again, I hope everybody, once the library opens, gets a chance to see it. And Greg, if you do want to go by and see it, I'm sure we can get you in, even though they're not truly open to the public. We can get you in for a private viewing of the work at some point. So just let me know and I'll make sure that works.
Certainly. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful weekend, and enjoy this beautiful weather and our new president-elect. So,
be careful.
bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Crazy people.